Food. It's far more than sustenance. It's the earliest language we ever learn, the language of culture.
Spoken in whispers through grandmother's recipes, shouted in crowded marketplaces, etched into the trade winds by ancient spices.
Food is a political force. It has incited revolutions, divided civilizations, and toppled empires.
It's the silent architect of economies, from the terraced rice fields of Southeast Asia to the wheat plains of Eastern Europe.
Because behind every meal, there's a story.
A story of stimulation. Coffee, once the sacred drink of Sufi mystics, crossed continents and reshaped the rhythm of Western life.
A story of ambition. Spices like pepper, clove, and cinnamon drove ships across uncharted oceans, igniting colonization and global exploration.
A story of survival. The humble potato rescued millions from famine, reshaping population centers and birthing new empires in its wake.
A story of power, from the stone-tipped spear of the hunter to the industrial meat line that now feeds billions.
And a story of seductive control. Pastry arts turned sugar into a geopolitical temptation, swaying monarchs and captivating entire societies.
Today,
we trace these narratives across continents and centuries
to uncover the grand tapestry of food, a force that has shaped humanity since the dawn of civilization. Spices, ginger, pepper, cardamom, cinnamon, and clove were the treasures of medieval Europe, more valuable than gold, sometimes even more than life itself. These fragrant gems didn't just flavor food, they preserved it, healed bodies, and marked social status with the scent of distant lands.
A single handful of nutmeg could buy a house. A pound of black pepper, worth an entire sheep. The demand was insatiable. Europe was hungry, not just for taste, but for power. In the 15th and 16th centuries, the spice trade rewrote the map of the world.
But the source of this aromatic gold lay far beyond the horizon. India, Ceylon, the spice islands of Indonesia. For centuries, Arab and Venetian merchants held a stranglehold over the trade routes, driving prices to dizzying heights. And then, the age of discovery began.
Driven by desire and desperation, European monarchs launched expeditions into the unknown. The spice trade was no longer just commerce, it was conquest. Portugal clashed with the Dutch over Malacca. Britain and France waged trade wars across the Indian Ocean. It became a global race for control, a spice-fueled arms race.
Out of this frenzy rose the East India Companies, corporate empires with private armies, colonial ambitions, and an insatiable appetite for dominance. They didn't just trade, they occupied, fortified, and ruled. Spices were no longer merely exotic imports, they were the currency of empire.
It's a story of small things shaping monumental change. A story of ambition, exploration, and brutal competition. The humble spice changed not only how food tasted, but how nations rose and fell. Coffee, a simple drink, yet a force that reshaped the very fabric of civilization. By the 17th century, coffee houses had become the intellectual engines of European cities. These smoke-tinged salons, steeped in the rich aroma of roasted beans, welcomed philosophers, merchants, artists, and revolutionaries. Here, in the flickering candlelight of London and Paris, bold ideas were exchanged like currency. Arguments sparked revolutions. Friendships forged manifestos. They weren't just cafes, they were crucibles of change. In Europe, they called them penny universities, because for the price of a single cup, one could access a world of thought. In 18th century London, coffee houses played a role nothing short of transformative. They were democratic by design, unbound by class, open to all. At these tables, George Bernard Shaw explored language, while Charles Darwin contemplated life's origins. Science, literature, and politics collided in a caffeinated storm of brilliance. But coffee's story doesn't begin in Europe. Its roots dig deep into the highlands of ancient Ethiopia. There, long before the Enlightenment, it was revered not as a drink, but as a spiritual elixir. Tribal rituals centered around the belief that coffee awakened not just the body, but the soul. It was communion, it was clarity, it was sacred.
And when coffee finally reached the gates of Europe, it wasn't met with welcome. It was foreign, bitter, strange, to some, even satanic. Pope Clement VIII, after tasting it, famously declared, "This devil's drink is so delicious, it would be a sin to let only non-believers enjoy it." And with a blessing, he sanctified its place in the Christian world.
What followed was a global awakening. From Venetian merchants to Parisian poets, coffee became more than a stimulant. It became a symbol of modernity, curiosity, and connection. Coffee houses evolved into cultural sanctuaries. Ideas crossed borders. Empires brewed over porcelain cups.
Today, centuries later, coffee remains more than a morning ritual. It is a language of inspiration, a quiet companion to revolutions large and small.
Because every cup tells a story, not just of beans and boiling water, but of minds awakened, of societies transformed, of history brewed drop by drop.
Who would have thought a humble root could alter the destiny of an entire continent?
The potato, unassuming, earthy, silent, became one of Europe's greatest saviors.
While wheat withered in the sun and rye fell to blight, the potato endured. It didn't just survive, it thrived, and in doing so, it rescued millions from hunger.
High-yielding, nutrient-dense, and remarkably resilient, this New World crop redefined food security. It grew even in poor soils, required a fraction of the land, and outperformed traditional grains by far.
Europe's population nearly doubled in just a century, fueled in large part by the steady supply of calories from this single plant.
That abundance fed the cities. It powered factories. It put labor behind the wheels of the Industrial Revolution. Without it, Europe's leap into modernity might have stumbled for decades.
The potato didn't just fill plates, it shifted history.
And yet, at first, Europeans feared it. Clergy called it the devil's apple. Farmers whispered of poison.
It took royal mandates, clever propaganda, and hunger to change minds. Over time, suspicion gave way to dependence.
By the 19th century, the potato had become central to daily life. In Ireland, it made up nearly 80% of the diet. But this dependency came at a price.
When blight struck in the 1840s, the result was devastating. The Great Famine claimed over 1 million lives and forced millions more to flee.
It never wore a crown or led an army. It wasn't etched into marble or sung of in ballads.
But the potato helped build modern Europe, fed its people, fueled its cities, and shaped its future.
So next time you take a bite of mashed potatoes or hear the sizzle of fries,
remember, you're tasting the legacy of a quiet revolution. Once, meat was a triumph, hunted with spears, shared over firelight, and honored in ritual. Today, it comes shrink-wrapped, microwaved in 60 seconds, and served with fries. How did we go from sacred spoils of the hunt to identical burgers assembled by stopwatch?
this isn't just the story of what we eat. It's the story of how we re-engineered eating itself.
In medieval towns, butchers were respected craftsmen, clad in ceremonial robes, their knives as sharp as their status. Today, their legacy lives on in drive-through uniforms and stainless steel assembly lines.
In 1904, the first hamburger, meat between two buns, was served at the St. Louis World's Fair. People were shocked. Eating meat with your hands? No knife? No ceremony? Barbaric. And yet, irresistible.
By the 1920s, Chicago's slaughterhouses and coast-to-coast railroads turned steak into a working man's staple. Meat was no longer reserved for aristocrats. It fueled factories, unions, and a hungry middle class. Then came the golden age of fast food. 1940, San Bernardino, California. Two brothers, Richard and Maurice McDonald, redefined the meal. No silverware, no waiters, just paper wrappers, limited menus, and precision timing. A revolution powered by speed, cheapness, and addictive flavors.
Salt, fat, sugar, engineered to seduce. Crispy coatings, lab-crafted scents, a sensory illusion of perfect taste. Fast food wasn't just convenient, it was chemical persuasion.
We've gone from chasing meat in the wild to designing it in labs, from campfires to food courts. But in gaining speed, did we lose something deeper?
Maybe the next chapter in the story isn't about faster meals, but about reconnecting with what we eat, reclaiming flavor, meaning, and the ancient joy of sharing food that feels real.
Sugar, cinnamon, cacao. For centuries, they weren't just flavors, they were the currency of affection.
One bite could seal a marriage, flaunt a crown, or ignite a trade war. Ready for the sweetest history lesson ever?
Picture ancient honey brewers, Baroque chocolate banquets, Victorian candy shops, and sky-high wedding cakes.
Speaking of cakes, in 17th century England, a one pie law let brides serve only one pastry. Bakers stacked several pies, called it one, and voila, the tiered wedding cake. Legal loophole, lifelong tradition.
In Renaissance Spain, chocolate was so coveted that diplomats hired private chocolateros with hush-hush recipes.
Louis XIV doubled down. No crown, no carriage, no court audience without chocolate in the protocol.
Earlier still, Slavic suitors slipped messages into gingerbread. Birds promised harmony. Flowers whispered tenderness. Diagonal lines shouted, "Wedding soon." Eat the cookie, swallow the proposal.
Fast forward to today. Neuroscientists show sharing dessert spikes oxytocin. Our ancestors felt that rush long before brain scans.
Let's be honest, first dates still gravitate to bakeries for a reason. Sugar talks.
From sacred mead to Michelin star mousse, confectionery has tracked our hunger for love, status, and diplomacy.
So, next time you unwrap a truffle or slice a birthday cake, remember, you're tasting 5,000 years of passion, power, and perfectly measured sugar. Every bite we take has a story. That warm soup? It's connected to ancient kitchens and forgotten battles.
Fresh bread? A gift from farmers and bakers across centuries. Even chocolate once traveled the world as a rare treasure.
Food isn't just fuel, it's history you can taste.
So next time you sit down to eat, pause for a moment.
That flavor might be carrying the echo of 1,000 years.